United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
AJ?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Kim Marie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can everyone hear me?
No.
We, tonight for Honoring Excellence, we needed to move a couple of things around. We had a couple of student recognitions that we're going to get back to in March. But we did, though, want to take some time to recognize you, as this is our month. Actually, we hit it each year. I think we miss it by a week when the state dedicates the week of Board Recognition Week, and this year it falls February 14th through the 20th, so we are right in the middle of it. And I thought I would begin by reading what was released by the Missouri School Boards Association. Missourians benefit every day from the dedicated energies and countless hours devoted by a group of more than 3,600 men and women from communities across the state. These public servants are elected by local constituents and do not receive compensation for their tireless efforts. They are the local school board members of Missouri. During the week of February 14th through the 20th, communities across the state will honor the dedicated service of their local boards of education during School Board Recognition Week. The goal is to build awareness and understanding of the important function an elected Board of Education plays in communities and schools. All Missouri citizens are asked to recognize the important contributions of these men and women and focus attention on the vital role these public officials play in the education of Missouri's children. So tonight I thought we would mix it up just a little bit. As I mentioned, I think you should have had a few tokens of appreciation that our schools dropped by last week, and I do want to mention that you may have a few more items coming up during your study session in a couple weeks. We had some schools that weren't able to get them over to us today, but they certainly wanted to do that. But our cabinet members are going to help me distribute the certificates to you as I call off your name. And who would like to help? Mr. Anderson, would you like to be first? Ms. Kim Marie Graham, Board President. Thank you, sir. Board Vice President, Mr. Nicholas Bartlow.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. A.J. Bird, we have your certificate for you here, sir. We will be sure to get that to you. Mr. Scott Connor. Mr. David Evans. Miss Angie Reed.
Appreciate it.
And Mr. Andrew Rothman.
Thank you.
Thank you, cabinet members, for your assistance with getting those distributed. And also, and I'm going to call for this video here in a moment, and then I will close it with this video. We had a chance for some students who came up with a thank you letter for our Board of Education. So Brian, if you could roll that, and that will wrap up Honoring Excellence for this evening.
Dear Liberty Board of Education members, we hope that this message finds each of you doing great.
We know that this year has been difficult for each of you, especially as you serve in your roles helping lead our school district.
You have had to make so many tough decisions since COVID-19 began nearly a year ago, and none of these decisions are ones that make everyone happy.
But in the end, we know that you make your decisions in our best interest. Your role as a school board member can sometimes be a thankless job, and one that many might take for granted.
We are so fortunate to be in a district that allows for so many opportunities in and out of the classroom. If it were not for your passion and commitment to serving us, none of this would be possible.
While we could go on and on sharing words of appreciation, we will choose to keep it simple and say thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Graham. Thank you, Mr. Bartlow.
Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Miss Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Rothman.
Thank you for being a Liberty Board of Education member and taking good care of us.
That's why I do it.
Yeah, very sweet.
Wow, great kids.
Okay, 2.04, public comment. Public, do you have a comment?
All right.
It's still like my 3 minutes. Alright. Moving on to our consent agenda.
I move the board approve consent agenda items. Oh, sorry, you have a little piece.
I have my thing I have to read, yes. But then,
Then I'm on.
Alright. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member.
I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.01 through 3.07.
Second.
AJ?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Angie? Yes. David?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Kim Marie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, moves us on to 4.01.
First of our reports this evening under reports from administration is innovation and learning. And so Dr. Westfall and Dr. Moore, I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Good evening, and on behalf of the Department of Innovation and Learning, we thank you all for your service for the Department of Education. We just want to bring a couple things forward to you tonight. First one is to talk through our kindergarten welcome, which is getting ready to open for the next year. So it starts on March 1st. The enrollment is through the student enrollment portal found on the district website. And due to COVID restrictions this year, we've decided upon registration that a video would be sent out to all the enrolling kindergartners. They include things like information from their home building, an introduction to the administration and staff, a day in the life of a kindergartner, and kindergarten readiness skills. For a few families that are still interested in the EPIC lottery, that is open through February 28th until midnight. And then they will sign up there in addition to signing up on our kindergarten portal. I know it's hard to believe, but this is going to be the class of 2035. So, just so you know. A couple of other things. A number of feedback loops have been sent out through our department. One of them is gathering information for our renewal for our learning management system, which is Canvas. So we had 90% of the respondents to our survey say that they would like to continue with that in the 6th through 12th grade. We will continue using Seesaw at the elementary level. The other thing that we sent out for this week, we have a return date set for tomorrow, is to ask our elementary students K through 4 what they intend to do next year in respect to virtual school. So we have right now still almost 2,300 students participating in virtual school. We do think we will be able to integrate them at the secondary level, but we are looking at the possibility, depending on what our families say to us in the survey, whether or not we will need to set up classes that are specifically elementary. And the last two things, just to close, we had a great, wonderful professional development day on Friday. We appreciate everybody who contributed to that. We did have some really exciting times. Both Dr. Moore and I were able to visit either via Zoom, or she was able to get to over half the buildings throughout the day. But we had some guest speakers, for example, author Ellen Keene, who is very famous in the elementary world and in teaching and learning. She was able to Zoom in with our staff at Shoal Creek. We also had some Pineapple PDs going on in various buildings like Donovan or Kelly Brook. Liberty High School had a huge one that they used for all their teachers. A lot of emphasis on PBIS and a lot of work with equity. And so we were very happy to see the work that all our schools put into that day. And then last but not least, today another snow day, and so we just appreciate the grace that our teachers, parents, students had. All of us, we not only had the challenge now of a snow day, but then we had the rolling power outages to deal with. So I did hear a story today that all the elementary kids were in a classroom, and then poof, their teacher was gone. And so they decided to take a heist and try to see if one of them could take ownership and take over the class. So it's always a challenge. We're always learning. But on behalf of our department, thank you.
It's amazing.
Any questions of Dr. Westfall or Dr. Moore in terms of their report this evening? We had a report of 2 areas, one close to Lewis and Clark and one close to Schumacher. I think one was earlier in the day and one was more midday. So we'll see how the next day or two goes as well. So, questions for the 2 of them? Okay. Next up then, as far as 4.02, our Chief Equity Officer is joining us via Zoom. So we're going to turn it over to Dr. Andrea Dixon-Seahorn for her report.
Good evening, everyone. Very pleased to be with you virtually. I wanted to just share with you a couple of updates from our board report for the month of February. Regarding strategic plan number 4, which is around equity action planning. We are currently hosting brief check-ins with each school leader and director and or department in the case of operations and human resources during this month. We've had some awesome conversations with school leaders and directors, and wanted to just share, just as a tag team to what Dr. Westfall had mentioned about equity conversations taking place during the district PD day. Wanted to share with you a number of schools that made it a focus for their professional learning on that day. Schools such as Liberty High School around unconscious bias, Liberty North High School around microaggressions, Shoal Creek and Ridgeview had a focus on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as Alexander Donovan and Manor Hill, South Valley Middle School, and Heritage Middle School. So very excited to get the reports in from those schools. Also, we had a department that devoted part or most of their day to a DEI focus, and that was the Fine Arts Department, specifically in the area of visual arts and their music focus areas. So just wanted to share that as a highlight for today under strategic plan number 4. Regarding strategic plan number 7, the Equity in Schools cohort is in full swing, as we have mentioned in the past, whether at the board report or whether in the board study session. We're very excited that on this Friday, our LPS team, along with cabinet members that have been invited to join us, we will actually dive into the equity audit tool. It is an online tool that we'll be utilizing, provided to us by the beloved community, and we'll be walking through half of that tool to conduct our audit, and then we'll convene again next Friday. Again, both of these are half-day sessions so that we can complete the audit, which is due by March 1st. We've also extended an invitation to representatives from the Kauffman Foundation to join us if they would like to be a part of that conversation with us as well. In reference to strategic plan number 8, very pleased to share with you just some quick data, some quick stats on our DLT DEI book talk series. As you know, this is been provided for any member of DLT who wants to be a part of these professional learning sessions. They've been going on since first semester, and we are now in our 4th installment of the DEI Book Talk series. And wanted to let you know that of our approximately 75 DLT team members, we have had 62 of 75, or 83% participate. Again, this is voluntary, and so we're very, very excited about those numbers. We've had roughly 41%, which would be equivalent to about 31 of 75 DLT members that have participated in at least one. 27%, which is equivalent to about 20 of 75 that have participated in 2 or more. We've had 5 out of 75, which is equivalent to about 5% that have participated in 3 or more. And we have 4 DLT members that have participated in all 4 of those sessions. So we currently have, so you want to talk about race going on at this time. It is being facilitated by Dr. Precious Kurth, and it is just all about really professional growth and personal reflection. And so we are pleased with the outcomes of this DEI Book Talk series. And then last but not least, just wanted to share an update very quickly on strategic plan number 14, specifically our cultural competency work group that's been focused on the focus groups that we will be holding very soon. As you know, we'll have students participating in focus groups, grades 5, 7, and 11. We now have all of those focus groups scheduled for the first week in March, and then we'll be working on a subgroup of us the rest of this week on getting the family focus groups planned for any time during the first 2 weeks of March. So just wanted to give you that as an update, and looking forward to those conversations with students and with families as a follow-up to our Panorama DEI survey. That concludes our brief report for this evening, and I'll entertain any questions or comments at this time.
Dr. Sehorn, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Is there any specific reason why the 5th, 7th, 11th grade are selected to be a part of this focus group?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. So we know that we can't go to every building and talk in every grade level. So we wanted to have a representative sample across the organization. So that is why we selected 5th grade from the elementary level in terms of just students that are getting ready to come out of elementary. We chose 7th grade students at the middle school level because they're just really literally right there in the middle. And then we chose 11th grade students rather than 9th or 10th, just because they now have some context, having been in school for 3 years, and can give us some insight before they get to their 12th grade year and graduate. We also elected, instead of going to every single building, to, again, in looking at a representative sample for our district, we've selected 6 elementary schools, we've selected 2 of 4 middle schools, and then we'll have conversations at all 3 of the high schools, Liberty High School, Liberty North, and Liberty Academy.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Dr. Dixon Sehorn?
Just after the focus groups, I know we've got the data and the research from the Panorama focus group, obviously, to dive deeper into that information, get some more commentary behind it. There's going to be, I assume, a report out to the board. Is that a correct statement?
I didn't hear all of that. I heard data, Panorama, and report.
You got it.
So yes, at some point, if I'm kind of piecing this together, at some point there will be kind of a follow-up report that we'll share with the board. Yes, after we get our data in from the focus groups. We did share, remember, just some preliminary data with you as a follow-up to when the survey was held back in October. But yes, we will come back and share some more comprehensive data about our findings and then recommendations for moving forward through the lens of students and families around DEI. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon Seahorn. Next up then, we have 4.03, our finance report. Ms. Cindy Sullivan.
Good evening, everyone. In addition to my report posted, I have a couple of things to share with you. The foundation formula was paid out at 93% in January. DESE is projecting a final appropriation level of 95.5%, which is great, but that still leaves us about $2.7 million short of 100% allocation. So hopefully it might inch up a little more than that, and that would be great if it did, but that's what we're hearing right now. They are also currently projecting a level funding stream for next year. On March 10th, I will be participating in a budget development webinar, and hopefully they will be able to explain if that's level based on where we end, level based on where we started, or exactly what kind of level that means. So looking forward to getting that information, as well as anything else they can share with us about developing the budget for next year. The elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund 2 allocation came in at $1.062 million. Approximately $446,000 of that, you will note in my report, has shown to be spent as district funds. That will be rolled up and used, that ESSER 2 allocation for that, leaving us a little over $600,000 left of that ESSER 2 allocation. We don't actually get those funds until May or June, so we're currently assessing how best to utilize the rest of those funds. Next step, trying to figure out what that might look like. Property taxes, our current collection rate is 97.66%, which is right at the total percentage we collected last year. So that's great news considering we still have 4 collection months left. So we should be back up to more where we're accustomed to collecting. And we budgeted at 97%, so we should be submitting a budget amendment to reflect more of what we're actually expecting this year. So that's on the good news front. And finally, next month, and I know you're all really excited about this, we start our budget conversation. Yes. Yes. So we will start next month with revenues, and this probably is a year where I know what I feel I know even less than I did last year at this time going forward, but we will get there and start with that next month. So that's what I have for you tonight, and if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Can I kind of tease something out? You mentioned ESSER.
Yes.
So there was 1 and then 2.
This is 2.
And we're anticipating a 3rd.
That is correct.
Okay. And hearing that that may be substantially higher than 1 or 2.
That is correct. And I anticipate hopefully hearing more about that in March as well.
Questions of Cindy? Okay. Thank you. Again, as she mentioned, we'll hit on revenues in March, expenditures, anticipated expenditures in April. That'll culminate in a draft budget document for you in May with our final approval at our June monthly board meeting. So thank you to Cindy and her team for the work that they've done, but then the work that they will also do. So making his way to the podium is Mr. Steve Anderson for our operations report.
Thank you. Also, in addition to what has been uploaded, I just have a few things to share just generally in operations. So with the challenging weather, which I'm sure we're all aware, especially the extreme cold, just to make you all aware that our team, Steve Aldrich's team, facilities and maintenance, has really over the last several days and through the weekend kind of babysat all the buildings and checked on them regularly just to make sure we didn't have any issues pop up, and thankfully we did that. We did catch a couple things, not major, but caught them early and in time. So appreciate his team for kind of stepping up over the past few days and making sure that we're ready if and when we do roll back. Also wanted to mention that our health services nursing team, this is actually in the report, in that nearly all of our nurses have now received the second vaccine, and appreciate the partnership with Liberty Hospital to help facilitate that. So feel really good about that, and now we kind of await the next phase in the vaccination process to when it hits all the district staff. One other point I want to hit on before speaking a little bit to our Return to Learn plan. This really warrants, I think, a little bit of attention. That's on the operations side. We've had some staffing challenges over the last many years, and really kind of hitting that fully staffed level is just been it's just been a significant challenge. Tanika Brown, who's the head of our Kids Zone department, mentioned to me today that they are now fully staffed and we have nobody on wait list, and that has never happened in the 7+ years that I've been here. And that may not sound too significant, but for the stress level that it brings on our team to just kind of keep that moving is really significant. I really did want to call out Dr. Vogelaar and his team. He really called together Dee Rosekrantz, Christelle Morgan, and Jill Volchester, and they came together and worked side by side with my team and put together a plan and executed it and made some changes in terms of how they did things, but made a huge difference, not only for her department, for all the departments. So just wanted to make sure that that was recognized tonight. So with that, I'll just pivot to the Return to Learn planning process. So you all had received, the community received an update from the superintendent's office on Friday to kind of outline a little bit of where we're at and where we're at least planning as we move forward into the coming months. You'll recall that back in December that we had a good conversation at the board meeting to discuss kind of where we've been through the first semester, some of the thinking as we look ahead to second semester. And really at the time mentioned that come February we would kind of pull back and give you all an update in terms of where we're at, what the data was showing across the district and across the Clay County area. But also we anticipate at that time that the CDC would be revising its guidance, and sure enough they have. So this is an appropriate time to revisit that. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that all along throughout the entire process, our team has conferred regularly, meeting, looking at the data, looking at trends, and really trying to figure out how we can continue to prepare to scale up face-to-face and in-person learning across the district. So with that, what I'll just mention here is that we have a couple different phases to the plan that we have kind of pulled together. The first obviously is the status quo, which everybody's aware of, and that's just that we have virtual is an option for everybody, but we have K-5 where it's face-to-face, in-person 5 days a week, and then the secondary is, as you know, hybrid model. So that's the status quo. The two initial things that we've analyzed and looked at potentially scaling up. One is that second phase we refer to as kind of bringing back some certain secondary subgroups, and primarily that would be for 4-day face-to-face learning at the secondary level for our special education students with disabilities, and also those students that are at risk of failing. And so we're having conversations about what that would look like. We're having conversations about identifying those populations and communicating with those families, but also other issues such as transportation and the complications that would come along with kind of implementing that phase. But that's the one that's probably most at the ready, and we're having good and active conversations about that. We're also looking at potentially reclaiming Wednesday as a full day. I take that back. Reclaim Wednesday as in-person learning with an early release as well. So that would be the next kind of phase up as part of that plan. And so that too has some implications across the system. But again, it's something that we talked about back in December, and we'll continue to evaluate that over the next couple weeks. Again, as we really watch closely those trends in terms of the numbers of cases and the positivity rate, and then the guidance that we're receiving from the Clay County Health Department. Beyond that is really when it gets a little bit more serious, and when we're at a point where we can welcome more of our secondary students back for in-person learning. And those are those next phases that we've talked about all along. I think the first look that we have had is maybe it would make more sense initially once where it is safe to do that and we can maintain all the guidance that's in place, is that we look at a 4-day and still maintain that Wednesday, again, just to help through that transition. But then also there would be that point, and this is the last phase of the plan, is just we're ready to kind of go back full force 5 days a week. So I suppose the main point is to let you all know, let the community know that we obviously have been meeting, discussing this regularly, planning on all the contingencies, planning on the ripple effect of once we go into one or next initial phase. But again, a lot of this is dependent upon the trends, and then of course working in partnership with the Clay County Health Department in terms of what is safe and how best to kind of move forward. So with that, I'll pivot real quick as an update to vaccine planning that we're working on. I mentioned this earlier in my report. So we continue to be working on a plan where all of LPS staff could be vaccinated, and we're working with a couple different partnerships and trying to sort that out. We initially thought this was a February-March endeavor. Now it looks more like an April project, but believe that here in the coming weeks we should have a plan ironed out for how we can best serve our staff for vaccination once it's here and the supplies are ready. We are also continuing to work with more on the side with Operation Safe Community, and really in terms of providing opportunities for our team, our staff to volunteer as those opportunities become available. So we're still in connection with that team as well, and so wanted to make you aware of that. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, and then of course our folks here in Innovation and Learning are happy to help as well.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson regarding his report?
I know it's early, you probably haven't dissected the CDC report guidelines, whatever, in totality, but have you taken a look at some of the mitigation factors they've recommended? How are we, in line with them, or do we have things we can work on? What's kind of the feel on that?
Sure. Yeah, so I would say the mitigation factors that they are recommending are really mitigation factors that we have had in play here since the beginning of the school year. There are 5 primary ones, which I'm sure everybody's aware of by now, but really the big one, the one that's most challenging, is the distancing one. And of course there's masks and sanitization, cleaning protocols and so forth. The other that is not in their recommendations that we really kind of put more of a push on, and that is with air purification in the HEPA filter project that we put into all of our classrooms. So that's obviously one of those things that they recommend with ventilation, but I think we've taken an extra measure there. But really it really comes down to the fact that we're in compliance fully with what they're recommending. And I think the issue that it all comes down to for us is the distancing part, which is really driving our plan at the secondary level.
Thank you.
So on that distancing point, you mentioned, I think, 4 or 5 steps up from where we are right now with 2 days in the middle and high school. Getting to the last 2 steps would reduce distancing significantly, it seems. Is that consistent across all the schools, or are there variations?
I think it's safe to say it's across all the secondary buildings that to move away from the hybrid model would either require a reduction in the distancing standard or for a decision to kind of do our best, right? So it's 6 feet pretty much across the system. I think if it got to that 3 or 4 foot range, I think we could probably honor that and accommodate in-person learning at the secondary level, 5 days.
And again, to point that out, though, the decision would be to go against that 6-foot social or the physical distancing piece, or the alternative being it's relaxed at the CDC or the health department level. So that's one of the bigger concerns as we think about increasing face-to-face. We know currently that we're able to apply that mitigation strategy successfully across all of our schools. Anything beyond that or increasing face-to-face then kind of jeopardizes that moving forward. So, other questions for Mr. Anderson?
Just because you may know, not that you're the expert at the Clay County Public Health Department, but I know there's guidelines within that CDC recommendation, anywhere from, I think it's blue, to being low transmission, to red being high risk. Is there an indication of where we are as a community? Are we on that high side, high transmission risk at this point?
So yes, so as it stands today, but again, the numbers are seemingly moving as we speak, right, in a good direction. But as it stands right now, using those 4 sections of the CDC, we are in the red, primarily red, with maybe 1 exception on the yellow.
Okay.
I would also point out that was it blue, green? No, blue. Anyway,
yeah.
I was just looking at it earlier. But the 2 more where it's not as virulent in the community, the virus. The 2 lesser standards, the blue and the green, I believe, that's when you can start. It actually recommends that you could maybe loosen up a little bit on the 6-foot distancing. It's when you're in the orange and red that it becomes more of an issue it's pretty strict in terms of guidance.
Okay.
And to that end, one of the things that we'll be doing this week and early next week, both with Clay County Public Health Center and then the City of Kansas City Health Department and Mid-America Regional Council, we've been working with Mark since early August in around gating criteria and trying to make sense of data and so forth. So fast forward, now we have the criteria that was set forward by the Centers for Disease Control that existed prior to last Friday, and then we have the new set. So you have the local, regional gating criteria, the first round of the CDC criteria, and now the most recent round of CDC criteria. And so we're going to be visiting with the health departments and then Mark to make sense of all that from a regional standpoint as we move forward. The other thing that we continue to engage in is conversations with our counterparts, our other school districts south of the river, west on the Kansas side, but then also in the Northland, knowing that each region is slightly different. To highlight one area that is unique, and I wish we had this issue on our western side of the metro area in Kansas, districts are already seeing vaccines administered to their educators and their staff. So they are a little bit more ahead of us as it relates to getting closer to some of these scenarios that we've laid out. We're going to be able to learn a little bit from them in terms of their trajectory and progress. At the same time, working closely with our health directors as it relates to what we might see in the coming weeks. The other thing I would say is, as we look at our data, we certainly have seen a decline in data within the system, within our schools, but then at the same time at the county level, we see that at the state level, the federal level. But then we're also listening and watching and hearing from the Centers for Disease Control and other medical experts as it relates to the coming weeks. So we're excited that we're moving in the right direction, but at the same time, we're not entirely out of the woods. And so I would encourage us to continue to keep informed, stay informed as to what we anticipate over the next couple of weeks working toward these plans.
It's, by the way, blue, then yellow, then orange, then red.
There you go.
Blue is good.
Blue is good.
Any other questions for Mr. Anderson or anything else to add from Innovation and Learning?
You touched on...
AJ Burke, can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you, AJ.
Steve or Dr. Tucker, question, where are we in terms of time frame of working with these scenarios? Are we just beginning to look at them, or is there any kind of time frame we're looking at to try to make a decision?
Great question. We've been looking at them since last fall. As far as a time frame, I wish I could give everyone in this meeting or virtually or watching online a definitive date as to when to prepare for. I think the conversations this week and next with Clay County and City of Kansas City Health Department will be telling. I think it's important for us to put detail to these plans and then communicate those plans out with our community, be it our staff, our students, our patrons, our parents, families, to ready everyone in the event that we're able to initiate those next steps. I would say we'll have detail within the next couple of weeks as far as adding to these plans that we communicated out on Friday. And then I hope to be able to bring back to the board kind of a phased approach with the help of our health departments as what it would mean to move to the next phase in their recovery plan. As a reminder, with Clay County Public Health Center, we currently sit at recovery phase 2. And as it speaks to increasing face-to-face learning or getting schools reopened completely, we don't see that under the current plan until recovery phase 3. So that is another question that we've posed of our health department to try to get some clarity around. So I wish I could give you a definitive date, AJ. We're just not at a point of being able to do that. Would you add anything to that, Mr. Anderson? Okay.
So I just have one other question. So we have seen some districts across the metro deciding to increase time. What do you know about what's going on in their districts and what their data looks like that might be different than what we're seeing here?
It's hard to look at their data entirely, given that they're in different counties, and so we have a hard enough time looking at Clay County. We can speak to those districts in Clay County, and that we all kind of see the similar information that's posted virtually or posted on our dashboards through Clay County. The other piece that we've seen is we looked at individual district dashboards. There's differences or disparities that exist from district to district to district that cause us to wonder how well each district is kind of working at implementing, the social distancing elements or the contact tracing or the quarantining, all things that we feel pretty good about having done over the course of the last several months in Liberty Public Schools. The other thing is we have seen some districts and their boards of education move forward with increased face-to-face learning, but yet we've not seen their local county health departments open things up to allow them to go to face-to-face learning. They've just done that either through a vote by their Board of Education or in terms of that next step that's communicated administratively. On the Kansas side, there's a little bit more structure as it relates to the Kansas Department of Education and some clarity that's been provided from their state department down to their schools, most recently revising some of their gating criteria to allow them to move more and more toward in-person learning, as well as working with health departments like Johnson and Wyandotte counties. So we watch and we look at, we see their criteria that they're putting in place for opening. A lot of what we've seen recently, particularly with Blue Valley and Olathe, has been a result of their accessibility to the vaccine. In other districts like Lee Summit, Blue Springs, Platte County, their decisions have been more localized in working with their boards of education based upon where they're at, what their community's feedback has been in terms of moving forward with in-person learning. The other thing I will say is some districts have had plans to try to accelerate this, as early as December or even November, and then they've been slowly pushing those plans a little bit deeper into the spring semester, and are now at a point at which hopefully trying to be able to reopen face-to-face learning options for their families and their districts.
So in your opinion, then, does that mean, I was trying to figure out how to phrase this, so Kimberly brought that up, but Lee Summit, Blue Springs, are they just taking on the liability of making the yes decision and saying?
It's hard to say. Blue Springs has been open since day one with that face-to-face option. Lee Summit had been virtually and then made the decision to move to more face-to-face learning here just within the last couple of weeks. Each circumstance is different, quite honestly, in working with their health departments. It's a full-time job trying to stay in touch with Clay County and what's going on here, let alone trying to dive into the specific nuances of all of those districts.
Right, and to that point, we don't have really, so we don't know if they're any better or worse. We're just choosing to stay more in line with what we're hearing from our county.
That's been our approach in working with Clay County Public Health Center, but then also trying to stay in line with what we're hearing out of the CDC in terms of trying to navigate and adhere to those mitigation protocols. I'll say this, we are one of the only districts in the metropolitan area that has been open and been able to remain open since September 8th without having to close schools for a period of time, even if it's for 3 or 4 days, or other districts that we've seen close for a couple of weeks, or other districts that have closed for an entire month. I think I would acknowledge that, first of all, but then I would secondly point to the return to learn plans that we've had in place, the mitigation protocols, and the work of our administrators, staff, students, families, in adhering to things like masks and our ability to social distance. That's created our success over the last several months. Moving forward, we know that the success we have had was built on that return to learn plan that we put in place. If we shift from that, I would hope we would be as successful. We have no way of guaranteeing that at this point.
So you've talked about the health department data by county. I know you've also been publishing weekly set of statistics about the district. How does that play into the calculation, in your opinion, of how do we feel confident to change the mode?
Yeah, great question. And it's really two separate pieces, if I'm hearing this correctly. So we continue to do our dashboard on a weekly basis, and that's updated every Wednesday, usually by 5 o'clock. And it's predicated off of the data that is received the prior week, and that closes by midnight on Friday. So what comes in over the weekend and the following week then is populated on the following Wednesday. So we continue to do that. During the fall semester, we were seeing prior to October, a plateau of anywhere from 30 to 40 cases on any given week. And then once we, moved past Halloween into the month of November, we saw a new plateau. And so we took a bit of a jump, right to about 70. Once we passed Thanksgiving, that increased to another plateau, closer to about 90 prior to entering into winter break. Of course, we heard Christmas was coming and New Year's and 2 major holidays, what would happen 10 to 14 days later in mid-January. Since we've come back in January, what we've seen, again, locally, state level, but then nationally, is a decline in the number of positive cases that people are seeing. A couple things there. While our number has gone down, we also know that we've had more disruptions during the month of January and so far in February, with either holidays, additional holidays like Martin Luther King Day, most recently President's Day, or we've had inclement weather disruptions. And so you may not have a full week as compared to a 3 or 4 day week, which then does a couple of things. It doesn't allow us to continue on with our antigen testing to the extent that we've been doing it on a full week. But then it also kind of diminishes the 5-day reporting of positive cases that we might see or that we might experience. We continue to watch that, and it continues to move in the right direction. That, though, doesn't contribute to the gating criteria that we have established by either our region with Mid-America Regional Council or Clayton County Public Health Center, or the 2 iterations that we've seen with the Centers for Disease Control, because those matrices or those gating criteria are really populated by our county data, right? So it's really both. It's what's community spread look like within the county and our region as applied to the gating criteria, but then it's also what's happening within our system. And still, from September to present, very limited transmission that again we attribute to our return to learn plan and those mitigation protocols. Other questions?
Let's get out of the red.
Yes. So we'll continue to put detail to these plans and look for opportunities to engage community. Again, huge thanks to Mr. Anderson and his team for continuing to work through return to learning, as well as all the support that our Innovation and Learning Department provides. So, thanks, Mr. Anderson. Next up then, Human Resources, Dr. Vogelaar.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to give an update on my department's strategic departmental work. We've uploaded a report for you to look at. I won't dive into everything that's written in there, but I do want to draw a few things out. First of all, with regard to our wellness work, one of the things that that we've been doing is expanding the concept of wellness from just physical health and wellness to emotional, social health and wellness. And so we've added a financial wellness component. Rebecca Fisher has been working with PNC Bank to provide a 6-week, 30-minute webinar series to focus on financial topics that matter to our employees. These topics can be kind of cherry-picked. You don't have to sign up and participate in all 6 weeks. The topics are varied enough that they might not apply to all employees, but it is an opportunity for employees to engage on topics that help equip them with regard to their financial wellness. We're hoping that this will launch an opportunity to partner with a variety of different experts in the field. The Cooperating School Districts Retirement Trust offers financial wellness platforms, as well as several local banks here in the Liberty area, all of which we're in conversation with to provide opportunities for our employees to get educational opportunities with regard to financial wellness. The other thing I want to talk about with regard to wellness is the negotiations that we've been in with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. As you know, they have extended the COVID-19 emergency period from the end of December through March. We've received word that they are willing to extend that again to June 30th, so the end of the fiscal year. This is good news for our employees because this means that outpatient services will be covered that are medically necessary and consistent with the CDC guidance if diagnosed with COVID-19. This also means that they'll be waiving cost sharing and co-payments for inpatient hospital admissions due to a diagnosis of COVID-19 for individuals fully insured by Blue KC. And members can also take advantage of visiting an in-network physician at no cost for virtual, telephonic, email, or text visits to medical services or behavioral health therapy. All of these usually have an out-of-pocket copay associated with them, and those are waived during this period of time. cautioning still does apply for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, but a lot of waivers for our employees during this COVID-19 emergency window. With regard to our equity goal on the Grow Your Own Teacher program, as you know, the Board of Education is heavily invested in the success of this program. We're launching our marketing campaign for this third class of students, and February 1st was kind of the initial launch. Communication with families and students, direct communication based on Teach KC survey results from last year occurred at the beginning of this month. This targeted individuals who indicated last year when they were juniors in high school on the Teach KC survey of their interest in education. We were able to then target our communications directly to those those students. There is going to be some marketing materials as well that will be launched tomorrow. I understand that Dallas has a quick news marketing launch that will go out, and then in packets to students at both high schools will be marketing as well. So this is the month when we get the word out for the Grow Your Own Teacher program. Hopefully we'll solicit several students interested in applying for that loan forgiveness scholarship opportunity that is funded through our school district and in partnership with the Education Foundation. So thank you for your commitment to that as well. Final thing I want to draw out is with regard to Team Liberty. We met as a group. Team Liberty met via Zoom on February 9th. The agenda for that focused on the 21-22 salary schedules. These conversations are continuing and ongoing over the next few weeks. And input from these interactions will be necessary to formulate the recommendations that we give to Dr. Tucker. We anticipate that recommendations then from Dr. Tucker would come before the board at the earliest March 23rd, 2021 regularly scheduled board meeting. There will be a first consideration with action to follow in April. A later deadline of an April 1st read with May action could also result, just depends on how those conversations go. Cindy Sullivan and I will be meeting with Team Liberty again this Thursday on the 18th, as well as with the Administrative Salary and Welfare committees to continue these conversations. With that, there's other items in the report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those questions. But that's my
I know
update.
Mr. Evans sat in on the last Team Liberty call, so appreciate him representing the Board of Education in that virtual meeting as well. So, questions of
Lively
Dr. Voglar?
conversation.
What's
It
that?
was a lively conversation about challenging topics to try and balance.
I don't have any questions, more appreciation for the effort to find the financial wellness. I mean, I think finding other opportunities to create, holistic wellness is great, so appreciate the team doing that.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Voglar. The last item then we have is my report under 4.06. A couple items to pull forward. As we shared with you at our February study session and had a good conversation around our Liberty Public Schools Board of Education perpetual calendar and rethinking that a little bit to focus on three key areas: annual reports from our departments, be it academic or operations, a second category of strategic plan updates that we would then bring forward with our Board of Education, and then lastly an area of program evaluations, and rethinking that a little bit more around areas of interest or research that we want to do as a system in terms of areas to explore or areas that we want to evaluate a little bit more deeply in terms of best practices, comparing what we do in our district compared to kind of those gold standards around various operations and department areas. Working with G&D consultants in that work to be able to solicit their feedback and input. And one of the things we want to do is use the perpetual calendar to really fuel or feed some of our communications planning. And so whether we're reporting out themes from our strategic plan, how do we take those areas and really kind of highlight them through a variety of social media posts or additional videos or communication included in our magazine. And so wanting to try to mirror the perpetual calendar work with our communications plan efforts. So we'll be working on that over the course of the next couple of months. The other thing I would reiterate on that is that we're talking about a calendar that really overlays the 2021-2022 school year. So we've been having some planning conversations and then would really begin that as we enter into the month of July. Another item to highlight is our continued work with real world learning in support by the Kauffman Foundation as well as partnership with Getting Smart. We've had a couple of team meetings here of late in really wanting to try to wrap our head around the totality of this work because it spans pre-K through grades 12, and it ranges from components of the skills and dispositions on our graduate profile to classroom learning experiences in tandem with a business partner, culminating in that market value asset in the end. So it's a really big piece to wrap your arms around, but that's exciting work amidst the pandemic, and so we're continuing to move that forward. We recognize the need to probably incorporate that more specifically and call that out on our strategic plan. So we're working with the team to be able to look at that and assess that. If we fold that in more intentionally, then we'll certainly bring that information to the board for your awareness. Also want to mention, and Dr. Dixon Seahorn saved this for me, I noticed in her report, but this was in and around our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee meeting. We've had a stakeholder committee in place now for 5 years. We looked at the dates, and it goes back to about 5 years ago, and they've accomplished a lot. We've done a lot as a system, but some of the items that we incorporated in this last week's agenda included a couple of audits that we're working on. One is through our Equity in Schools cohort, which was mentioned earlier, but then also a curriculum audit that's being conducted in partnership between the Office of Equity and our Innovation and Learning Department. And as Nick asked earlier, as those findings surface, we'll certainly report that to the board and attribute, that association to the strategic plan work or actions that we may need to take moving forward. The last thing that I wanted to mention is in and around the spring legislative session. Much like many of the schools across the area, the legislative session has had some starts and stops. The House of Representatives early in the session was suspended for about a week due to COVID and cases, bless you. And then this week we see the Senate is on pause. There's no shortage of bills. There are over 440 some bills that incorporate or relate to education of the 1,300 and some filed back in December. With that, we're seeing topics like school vouchers, charter school expansion, virtual charter schools, open enrollment, in which there are specific bills attributed to each. We're really watching Senate Bill 55 right now because it's shaping up to be what might be later this session an omnibus bill in terms of a large bill that incorporates a lot of different changes that might impact public education. Continuing to watch that, and then also encouraging our staff as well as parents. We've had parents reach out to us asking, how can we get involved in terms of communicating with legislators, but certainly encouraging people to reach out and have those conversations with our area legislators, of which we are very fortunate. They're very supportive of public education in our area, so we appreciate the partnerships that we have with them. Last thing that I'll wrap up with is continued planning this semester for our 2021-2022 school year. That's ongoing to provide face-to-face instruction and ready for those families that might opt into continuing their learning virtually. So we appreciate all of the work of all of our team in getting us ready to wrap up this year, but then also plan for the coming year ahead. With that said, we'd certainly open it up for any questions you all may have of me this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to unfinished business. We have a policy for review on first read, JCBA, professional staff compensation.
You do have, surprisingly, only one item to take a look at. So this is the one policy, and again, it's for first read. So take a look at it, and we'll bring this back to you for consideration at our regular monthly meeting in March.
All right, and that moves us to 5.02, real estate purchase.
This item we've been talking about for some time as a Board of Education, and we've spent some time with this under real estate, under our closed session, and then brought it forward for consideration, but wanted to have Mr. Anderson speak to this as it relates to a real estate opportunity for the district.
Sure, thank you. And yes, so this would be the actual action required to accept the agreement that has been negotiated between the County Public Library and School District. Our legal counsel, Tom Capps, was very involved and actually drafted the agreement that's before you. The library essentially had no recommended edits to it. And so as you'll see, it's the recommendation to move forward and purchase the property. It's about 18,000 square feet over there on Kent Street. And the cost to purchase is at $750,000. conversations about how it could be utilized more as a support function. But details and plans are yet to come. And I think the timing of folding this into the conversations in and around our facility master planning, which is likely coming into the summer, makes good sense. So would, again, appreciate consideration of this tonight. And then if it's approved, we'll be moving forward to close on the property. I believe it's towards the end of March, if not sooner.
Had the opportunity to have a lot of conversation about this in the closed session. Any additional questions?
So there was a closed bid process where we had about a month to submit a bid, and then others did as well, right?
That's correct. We were one of two that submitted bids for the project.
Does someone need to read the entire resolution?
I believe so.
I move the resolution be approved as listed below. Can I do that?
You ready? After you read.
Be it resolved, and that the Board of Education of Liberty Public School District Number 53 has determined that additional buildings and grounds are needed by the district for school purposes. The board hereby approves the purchase of real property and improvements commonly known as 1000 Kent Street, Liberty, Clay County, Missouri, legally described as Tract 2 replat of Lot F, replat for Liberty Shopping Mall, located in Liberty, Clay County, Missouri. From Consolidated Library District Number 3, aka Mid-Continent Public Library, as legally described, and for the terms set forth in the written agreement in the form presented to the board and attached to this resolution. And the President of the Board of Education or Superintendent of Schools is authorized to execute this agreement on behalf of the school district, and is further authorized to execute any and all other documents necessary to effectuate the purpose of the purchase agreement, and if necessary, an addendum to the attached written agreement extending the due diligence period and closing date for a period of no more than 30 days from the dates stated in the attached agreement.
I move the resolution be approved as read.
Second. Props to the voice.
AJ?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Kim Marie?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, new business, tiered high school diploma.
Next item is something that we've been working on with our high school study team, and Dr. Moore has stayed close to that, and so we wanted to bring this to you this evening. A few slides that were uploaded to board docs for your perusal as well. This is presented for first read, and so I appreciate the teams kind of working through all of the detail and working to try to make sure that we have a variety of opportunities for our students. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Moore.
Thank you. This topic was brought up maybe a little bit over a year ago, and then kind of with COVID, we kind of put it on the back burner, but I believe we talked about it maybe at a study session. So over the last few years, the high school study team, along with our administrators, our director of guidance at both of the high schools, Melissa Norris, several other people have come together to put this proposal to share with you. So the proposal has two pieces to it. The first one is that we are looking at the idea of a tiered diploma. And so you can see within, we'll go through and kind of show there are 3 different levels of the diploma that a student could graduate with. And what we're trying to do with that is make sure that every student walks out of our high school with an MBA, at least one. And in the proposal that you have, there are some sample MBAs that you can see. But that is our goal, that every student would walk out with an MBA. And the proposal for that would begin with our current 8th grade class. That takes a while to get, and our students have already developed a 4-year plan. So that would begin with that class. The second piece that we would like to propose is that we would add a cum laude system to, in addition to the valedictorian and salutatorian. And that is to be more inclusive and add more students to be recognized at graduation. Currently, students with 3.9 or 4.0 are the only ones who are recognized, and this would change that. And we would begin that next year. So I just wanted to point out the pieces that it ties to with our strategic plan, plans 2, 4, 9, and 10. And you can look at that and see how it ties to each of those. I don't want to spend a bunch of time on that. So here are the diploma options that we would like to recommend. 3 different ones. You would have a silver seal, which would be the state minimum. That's 24 credits, and students would have 1 MBA required out of that. The gold seal, which is what we currently have, 25.5 credits and 1 MBA. And then the last one is a platinum seal, which is distinguished, 28 credits. So they would take 7 classes all 4 years, and they would have 2 MBAs required with that. Take this off for a second, sorry. The with honors designation then has summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and cum laude, if you remember that from college years. What we did is made the summa cum laude.
They didn't apply to me.
Me neither.
Why do I look at them? Summa cum laude would be your students who have a 3.9 to 4.0. Magna cum laude, 3.7 to 3.89. And then the cum laude, 3.5 to 3.69. So you can see instead of simply honoring students who would be a 3.9 and to a 4.0, we would be honoring students also from a 3.5 to a 3.89 as well. So we have been talking about this for a few years now, and we are really ready to put it into action. We've had focus groups with parents at both of the high schools. We've had 2 different dates set for student groups, and they've been on snow days, on virtual days, so we have postponed those. So that will happen this week into next week. Also the work with department chairs, the counseling teams, Dr. Soluri has been a huge part of this, and obviously the high school principals. Dr. Adams has really helped lead the charge on this process. Our goal then is to share it with incoming freshmen students and parents, and then next year implement the with honors program, and then over the next few years continue to grow the MBAs so that by the time students get into high school they have several options for that, which we already do now, but we would just have that many more options available to them as they continue over the next couple of years. So that was a brief overview in addition to the proposal that we shared with you at the end of last week, if you have questions.
The other piece that you see reflected is in terms of amendments to board policies that we anticipate needing to be done to reflect the changes that Dr. Moore is speaking to. So I appreciate the forethought around that. Moving from that minimum state requirement, adjusting our board policies, and then moving toward these tiers. So
Yes, so one of the things that's in our board policy currently that we would change with this is that the board policy states that you have to have 8 semesters of high school work in order to be a valedictorian or a salutatorian, and so we feel it's important to take that out, and that any student who, we have many students who can graduate at December, that semester, and we don't want to discourage those students from not being able to receive recognition for their hard work. So part of the board policy is taking that piece out. The other piece with the 24 credits, if you think about like, well, why would we minimize that? While we don't have a huge dropout rate, the students that do drop out are right there. They're right there. And so this would really help those students hang on and get up to that 24 state requirement level, so that they do get a high school diploma.
I do have a question, Dr. Moore, on the SUMA.
Yes.
Whichever the highest level is, 3.9 to 4.0. So today the valedictorians all have 4.0.
Correct.
So talk to me about the thinking there of expanding that. I just want to understand that more. It feels like maybe we're losing some distinction for kids who have kept that 4.0, which is pretty hard.
So if they have a 4.0, they would still be the valedictorian.
Okay.
And then they would also be recognized with summa cum laude, with honors there, with highest honor. And typically, a lot of colleges have the summa cum laude as just a 4.0, but we felt like, the committee felt like then you're just recognizing valedictorians twice and nobody else within that group. So we felt like salutatorians and valedictorians could be recognized with the highest honor, and then you still have several students. We did the math, and I can't remember, but I mean, it was about 100 students additional that would be recognized with great honor and with honor at each high school for their work. So we kind of went back and forth on that, so that is something that, you know, obviously if there's questions about it, we can look at, but that's where we kind of looked at keeping it a 4.0, moving it 3.9 to 4.0, or possibly having it 3.8 to 4.0.
And there's varying degrees of that as you research the cum laude, sum laude, magna, the laude system. How's that? There's variations of that and different kind of benchmarks on how you split that up, whether you're looking at the collegiate level or whether you're looking at as applied to high schools. So.
I also think the other thing we need to think about, if we are talking about and professing to do thriving, and that failure is an option and that you learn from failure, if we, I like this because I feel like that is more in line with what we are saying. For those students who strive to get that 4.0, that's great, but you also have those perfectionists that make themselves and their parental units crazy while they get that, and their anxiety levels sometimes impact their mental health. And I think that might help ease some stressors for some of our students and our families.
I think we all have examples of students who maybe were striving to be a 4.0, to be valedictorian, and with this pandemic, they got their first B. And so it almost kind of, I think, like you said, gives them a little bit of like, okay, I can still graduate with honors and be recognized, but I don't have to strive for perfection.
There's a little bit of that grace. This is not college yet.
The other thing I would say, and we've seen this being brought forward over the last several years in our district and others, and that's the emphasis of social emotional learning. And it ranges from those traumatic experience or adverse child experiences to high anxiety due to, you know, I need to maintain my level of performance and everything in between. So I think you're exactly right. And so then how can we come alongside kids, regardless of where they're at, and ensure that they are thriving and that they're developing those skills and dispositions along with the knowledge to not only hit these marks, but certainly be successful beyond high school. And that market value asset to underscore that, one of those, at least one for every single high school student. Our hope there is for that to serve as a bridge. What are you interested in? What do you anticipate pursuing post-high school? Whether it's college, whether it's the workforce, 2-year, 4-year institution. That's the intent of that real-world learning experience. And so that's a significant lift to think about all of our graduates over the course of their high school experience and having at least one market value asset. So that's exciting work as well. Other questions of Dr. Moore?
So knowing this kind of came out of the high school study session, I assume this is going on at other high schools, that some tiering system is in place in other areas? True?
It's been in place in other districts for a long time, some districts.
There are some districts that do have it.
We've talked about this off and on for years. I'm loving the idea.
The other thing I would say, to your point around the market value asset, that's in collaboration with Kaufman, of which, you know, their footprint has over, let me get this wrong, between the Kansas and the Missouri side, I think they hit like a saturation of about 30 school districts. Not all 30 school districts are in round 1. We're in cohort 1, which I believe there's about 14 or 15 districts that are trying to scale up their market value assets. So it's happening collaboratively on the MVA side, and then there are other districts that have a tiered diploma approach, or seals of excellence, as perhaps it's called in other systems.
So I'm seeing all the positives, and totally get them with Scott. All good. Any negatives that have come up as you guys have talked about it and surfaced it out, or is it everybody's just like, let's roll?
No, everybody that we've worked with has been very positive about it. Parents have been positive with regard to it. And like I said, we haven't had the opportunity to talk to students. We'll have that before it goes for second read, and I'll bring that back to you. But I think students and parents will both, parents like the idea of just having that, kind of what Angie said, that additional opportunity for grace within that, 3.5 to 4.0 range. And so that has been exciting. The other piece is that it's allowed us to think through with Melissa Norris what we can do for students at Liberty Academy and what an MBA looks like for students there, and then what if students who are going through the Missouri Options Program, how do we still get them an MBA, and how can they still get a seal? So in this, with this plan, they can still get a seal and graduate with that, which I think is really important for that. The other piece that we're working on right now with Getting Smart is an extended transcript, so that every student, when they leave us, will have that page 2. And we're going to pilot a program with them, hopefully here soon, that every student, when they walk away, they don't only have their transcript of courses, but then they have their MBAs and all the additional things they were able to do during their time in Liberty.
Anything else? Okay.
AJ Bird, I have a question here.
Yes, AJ.
Sorry, I can't recall the name of the book at the moment, what we're reading right now. One of the things that the authors are talking about is how we become such an emphasis on numbers. And here again, this looks like, don't get me wrong, students should be recognized for their achievements, but it doesn't seem to have much in it about social emotional learning and growing. Just have we looked and thought about that book as we've read it?
I think you're speaking to our study session book, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity.
So I appreciate you mentioning that. And if I heard you correctly, your question is around, where are we honing in or focusing in on social emotional learning? A couple things to that end. Yeah, a couple things to that end is continuing our work with Panorama and surveying kids. But then part of that transcript project or that portfolio project is taking that data and really making that visible to both the student, but then also the family. So if you think about a student's scorecard, it's not just their quarter grades or semester grades, but it's also their social emotional learning scorecard through Panorama that we might be able to elevate and provide more emphasis on for their awareness. The other piece is that graduate profile that has all of those skills and dispositions. And that dovetails here. It also speaks to real world learning, but how can we ensure that from the elementary level to middle to high school that we're incorporating those skills and dispositions with the graduate profile for our kids to grow in their understanding of the skills they need beyond high school and in life. A lot of it's professional skills, but then a lot of that also incorporates social emotional learning. I don't know if Dr. Moore or Dr. Westfall, you all have anything else to add to that.
I think the part you added about the graduate profile, one of the things that we're also trying to do is make that a part of a portfolio for students. So when they walk away, that they have artifacts and they've shown, the things that how they've grown as a student and just as a citizen of our world, how they've grown by, and so being an entrepreneur and personally, culturally, all of those things that are important that they can look back and reflect. It's not something they might necessarily take with them, but it's something that they can surely reflect on from the time that they're in kindergarten all the way to the time that they're a senior getting ready to graduate.
Other questions? Okay. Time between now and our March meeting, so take a look at it. If you have other thoughts, ideas, or questions, considerations, please surface those. Otherwise, you'll see that at our March agenda for your consideration. So
Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Moore and the team.
All right. 6.02, architectural and engineering services.
Another item for first read this evening we've been working on for some time is a process for soliciting proposals we've been working through for architectural and engineering services. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. As you noted, we actually put this out back about a year ago. Yes, so we solicited proposals back in March of last year. And for obvious reasons, we actually just hit the pause button to kind of make our way into the school year here to get everything up and running. So we did, all of those who submitted back in March, we invited them into a process whereby each one was given an opportunity to do a Spark online interview with some preset questions that they then answered. We had a total of 12 firms submit interest. That would be both for facility master planning and architectural and engineering services, kind of guide us through the construction process. So of the 12 firms, 10 of them actually did submit for the Spark interview. We brought 3 in to actually do a Zoom interaction interview. And out of that group, we decided and recommended, it was unanimous to recommend that we stay with Hollis & Miller and continue on with their services for the next couple of years. And as Dr. Tucker mentioned, this is just first read. We still are in the process of working through the contract, language within the contract. We would anticipate having that in front of you next month. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I know we have used Hollis & Miller this last go around. How many times now, if you recall?
Sure. The number of times, I think this will be the third time that we've kind of renewed with them. But we just finished about 10 years with them. Prior to that, we had other firms that we worked with for about a decade or so over the past 30, 40 years. So, but yeah, we've had them since, I believe it was 2010.
Any other questions for Steve? So we will see this as well in March, and then after the board's consideration, that will then kind of springboard us into revisiting facilities master plan, our demographic study we recently did, looking at our train track, similar to what Mr. Anderson shared. So more to come on that item as well. Okay. We'll let Mr. Anderson keep the mic to walk us through our contracts, purchases, and bids this evening.
Sure. We have a handful of emergency purchases and actions, all of which you've received a Friday or update along the way the past couple of weeks. 3 of these items were related to a water line break at Liberty North, which created some challenges for us over a couple days. Appreciate the team kind of swinging and taking care of that. But that would be H&L Restoration, Train, and Lexington Plumbing. Those were the 3 firms that we brought in to assist us. In addition, there's a contract in here for American Trailer and Storage, and again, that is to store a variety of issues as we kind of transition through COVID time. And then the last one is with Houghton Mifflin, and that is with respect to allowing for some learning resources that we were a little bit pressed on time there, so we kind of rushed that one forward because they were needing it quickly. Happy to take any questions.
We don't have totals on the first chunk of those?
Not yet. We brought them in. We'll probably see that here in the next couple weeks. Our best estimate total, I don't have the breakdown, is in the neighborhood of about $70,000. Of course, insurance will cover all but the deductible there.
Well, I'm just wondering if we can approve something. We don't know the detail. I'm happy to do it up to a certain amount. That just looked weird to me. Maybe not.
Yeah, that is a great question. Apologize for that. So I
want to make sure you're covered. I just
yeah, no, that's a good point.
What if we change the motion rather than purchase to work with these companies?
I think you could do that, or given that it is an emergency provision, we're giving you an update ahead of time. So I don't know that we
We don't
could
have to
actually.
approve anything on that, we'll just
Yeah,
approve it later.
you could undo the action item, just keep that as information only, and then keep the motion language in and around the following two contracts with American Trailer and Houghton Middle. That work?
So I move the board approve the agreement with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt and American Trailer Storage.
Second?
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you for making that.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, moving on to the Board of Education section. So you'll see there the resolution that we're putting forward for consideration in response to the ton of legislation that is in front of the legislature this session, much of which does not support public education in the way that we would like to see it supported. And I don't know if anyone is following any of the legislation very closely. A lot of what's happening, a lot of what's being pushed through is around charter schools. And I think we've all followed that enough to know that that can be pretty damaging to a school district. And then there's some other.
Yeah, for the record, I think in reading through this, it just says basically, I'm not for or against charter schools. I'm just, if you're gonna have a charter school, you've
Yep.
gotta play by the same rules that I gotta play by.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
We would like some accountability.
We would like accountability.
Yeah.
We would like them to have the same, be required to serve all of the same kids.
I move the board adopt the student protection resolution.
Second?
Nice.
AJ,
That's easy, thanks.
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
motion carries.
Nice. That was easy. All right.
No list of upcoming meetings? Next study session, September 2nd. And 7.03, board remarks.
I'll just echo what Dr. Tucker said earlier about the preparation that obviously the whole district has gone through, and district leadership team all the way down to teachers. I think we forget where we were back in September sometimes as we've gone through this entire process. The fact that we've been able to stay open in a meaningful way, not having to close an entire school through all of this is pretty remarkable, and a testament to not only the planning, but the execution of it that's happened within every building, as well as parents and, guardians and everybody, students in particular also, taking it serious, doing what they can. So kudos, again, just another recognition of that.
And I would just draw out one piece of that that Steve mentioned earlier, which is the CDC mitigation guidelines that are coming out now are the things that we've been doing all along. And so that just demonstrates a lot of hard work and attention to trying to do the right things for kids. So thank you.
And thank you for the recognition.
Yep.
On board recognition.
Very small token, but yeah, you were all very appreciated, so. And we will make sure and get AJ his plaque, so.
Right.
I think David said it earlier, we saw the video from the kids, that's why we all do it, right? So, thank you. I move the board adjourn.
Second.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes?
Kim Marie,
Yes.
motion carries.